You have probably never thought of yourself as a squirrel's favorite anything, but somewhere in your backyard right now, there is a squirrel who has already decided. No vote was taken, no competition was held. They just know. And the way they show it is so quiet, so folded into 5-second moments you walk past a dozen times a day, that most people spend years standing 3 feet away from it without ever once seeing it clearly. I put everything I know about the squirrels in your yard into a book, linked below if you want it. These are not tricks. They are not behaviors you trained into them with sunflower seeds off your porch railing. These are 5 things a squirrel does specifically, exclusively, and deliberately for one single person, and if you are watching this right now, there is a very good chance that person is you. Stay until the 5th one, because that one is going to stop you completely. Most people assume every squirrel in their yard treats every human exactly the same. Freeze, calculate, decide whether to run. Bill Bateman, who has spent years studying how urban wildlife recalibrates its behavior specifically around the humans it lives beside, found something almost every homeowner walks right past without noticing. Squirrels who share a yard with one specific person do not run the same distance from that person that they run from everyone else who walks through. Researchers call it flight initiation distance, the exact moment an animal decides a human has crossed into dangerous range and bolts for the nearest tree. For a stranger cutting across your lawn, a squirrel might trigger that bolt at 15 feet. For the mail carrier who walks the same path every single afternoon but never stops, never speaks, never earns the recognition, that distance barely shrinks at all even after years. For you, walking the exact same path at the exact same hour, that same squirrel might let you close to 5 before it even shifts its weight. That gap does not close by accident, and it does not close overnight. It closes because that squirrel has spent months quietly building a private risk profile of you specifically, running the calculation over and over on every ordinary afternoon you never thought twice about, weighing your footsteps, your voice, the exact hour you tend to walk outside, against a threshold it keeps privately adjusting downward. Your presence recalibrates its entire nervous system in real time, and the shrinking distance between you and that squirrel is the visible readout of a decision it made long before you ever noticed it happening. Here is the part almost nobody realizes is even possible. Robert McCleary, who runs wildlife research at the University of Florida, has shown that squirrels are not just tolerating a general category called human. They are recognizing individuals, specific faces, specific gaits, specific voices, filed away and cross-referenced every single time you step outside, the same way you would recognize a coworker's walk from across a parking lot before you could ever see their face. A squirrel that has bonded to you is not reacting to the shape of a person in general. It is reacting to you precisely the way it would recognize one particular rival 3 trees over from 100 feet away, or a specific neighborhood hawk by the shape of its glide long before the wings are close enough to identify any other way, which means every time your squirrel watches you cross the yard without flinching, while it absolutely will flinch from your neighbor doing the exact same thing 30 seconds later, it already ran that recognition and already ruled out every other possibility on the list. It is not seeing a person. It has never been seeing a person. It has been seeing you. Now here is number 3, and this is the one where the science gets genuinely strange. Michael Steele at Wilkes University has spent decades studying what squirrels actually do with the food they collect, and one detail from his caching research rarely makes it outside academic papers. Squirrels do not bury food just anywhere convenient. They are constantly weighing the risk of being watched by a rival while they cache, which is exactly why the vast majority of their hoarding happens under cover, tucked against fence lines, buried beneath shrubs, anywhere that keeps the burial hidden from prying eyes, and why a squirrel that senses it is being watched by another squirrel will often fake a burial entirely, digging and covering an empty hole just to mislead a rival into digging in the wrong spot later. But squirrels that have bonded to a specific person will sometimes break the real version of that rule on purpose. They will cache out in the open, close to where that person sits every evening, close to the exact stretch of yard that person walks through every single day, in a spot that offers zero cover from anything except one variable: you. If a squirrel is burying a nut 4 feet from your porch chair instead of under the safer hidden fence line 30 feet away, that is not carelessness and it is not laziness. That is a squirrel treating your presence as a form of protection real enough to override millions of years of caching instinct built specifically to avoid exposure. It has decided you are not a threat it needs to hide its food from. You are the reason it does not have to. Robert Leshak at Auburn spent years cataloging the vocal language squirrels actually use: the cook, the quaya, the muk-muk, each one carrying a slightly different meaning depending on the threat and the distance of whatever triggered it. Almost everything you hear from the squirrels in your yard is alarm: a hawk drifting overhead, a dog barking 2 yards over, a stranger walking too fast down the sidewalk toward the mailbox. But buried inside Leashawk's recordings is something quieter, a soft, clipped version of the cook call that shows up almost exclusively when a bonded squirrel spots a familiar person approaching rather than a threat. It is not an alarm call with the volume turned down. It is something closer to an acknowledgement, a small vocal marker that essentially says, "I see you and this is not a threat." Delivered in a register so subtle most people never register it as a call at all, easy to mistake for background noise unless you already know exactly what you are listening for. If your squirrel has ever let out one short, quiet chirp the second it spotted you crossing the yard and then simply gone right back to whatever it was doing a half second later, you are not imagining that. You are being greeted in the only vocabulary a squirrel has ever had. This last one is the one that changes how you watch your yard forever, so stay with it. Lucia Jacobs at Berkeley has spent her career mapping how squirrels build and use spatial memory, and one finding from her research explains something almost every backyard observer has noticed without ever understanding why. Squirrels build detailed cognitive maps, not just of where the food is buried, but of where safety exists relative to fixed landmarks across their entire territory. The same maps they rely on to outrun a hawk or vanish from a dog in less than a second, without ever appearing to look where they are going. A squirrel with a bonded human does not file that person away as just another moving object to route around. It files that person as a fixed point of safety on its internal map, filed in the same category as a den tree or a reliable escape route. It has used 100 times before and trusts without needing to check twice, which is exactly why you will notice a bonded squirrel consistently choosing to forage, groom, or stretch out flat on a warm branch within a short radius of wherever you happen to be sitting, even when there is more food, more shade, or more cover somewhere else in the yard entirely, and even when that better spot is only a few feet further away. That is not coincidence, and it has nothing to do with the food you leave out for it. Its internal map has marked your location as one of the safest coordinates in its entire territory, and it keeps returning to that coordinate for the same reason you keep returning to the people who make you feel safe, because that is what safety is supposed to feel like. 5 things. 5 ways a squirrel has been telling you the same thing over and over, in a language you were never taught to read. The shrinking distance it lets you close that it would never allow a stranger, not even one it sees every single day. The specific recognition running behind every glance it gives you. The cache it buries closer to you than caution should ever permit. The soft, quiet call reserved only for the moment it spots you. And the invisible map that keeps pulling it back to wherever you happen to be standing, out of everywhere else in the yard it could choose to be. None of it was trained, none of it is about the food. It is a wild animal with a brain built entirely around suspicion and distance, choosing you specifically as the one exception it has ever made.